Felt Makers Ireland. They're a voluntary organisation, and I was watching a demonstration and it was on felting, and this magic happened.
Behind every creative person or small business is a great story waiting to be told.
And we are here to tell them.
I'm Shane, aspiring author and man behind I-Endeavour.
I'm Hannah, semi-abstract artist and woman behind Sarah's Studio. And this is the
I-Endeavour podcast.
So, welcome back to episode 9 of the I-Endeavour podcast. We're here today with Tamzen Lundy of Tamzen Lundy Designs. Did I pronounce that right?
Just about, yeah. Tamzen Lundy. Tamzen Lundy Designs.
Lundy. Well, welcome. Hello. How are you?
How's it going?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you too. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and what it is you do, or create in your case?
Okay. So I'm Tamzen from Tamzen Lundy Designs, and I have a design background, which is fashion design, really. I was a knitwear designer for a long time, and I worked in retail. I have lived back in Ireland since early 2000, but my degree's from Manchester, and I worked in Belgium for about 5 years with a big retail company, and again here with commercial stuff. But I set up Tamzen Lundy Designs 15 years ago, and I was designing knitwear freelance for manufacturers. But then COVID hit last year. So the other thing that I do, and the main thing that I do now, is felt making. And that is taking the raw wool fibre and making the material we know as felt. So I consider myself a felt maker now, and that's my business of the past year. So it's very new.
I love felt making. I did it in school. I had a very progressive teacher, and we did it in school, and I loved it so much. And we loved your business when we first saw it, especially Shane, who must have bought half your stock at Christmas. Absolutely. Like every day I'd come downstairs and he'd be like, I bought something. I'd be like, oh no, is it another gnome?
They're just so nice. I love them.
I love the mushrooms as well. Like I made a garland out of your mushrooms at Christmas. So I have kind of downstairs we're quite traditional at Christmas, and then upstairs is where I get all my colour in. So I bought like all your different coloured ones and then made a garland out of it. Like we love your...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realise how much work goes into making felt and stuff like that. So it's been great to see like your stories and stuff actually showing you doing the process. So you touched upon, obviously you went to college then to do fashion, but did you learn felting when you were in college, or is it something you've learnt yourself?
No, I didn't learn felting at all. I was a true fashion designer, but I was really into knitwear. So I used to knit using a knitting machine an awful lot. And that's what I went on to be, a knitwear designer. We had exposure to other textiles like weaving and printing, but I didn't see felting until adulthood, until in my 30s at the Knit and Stitch show in Dublin. And it was a small stand run by Felt Makers Ireland. They're a voluntary organisation, and I was watching a demonstration and it was on felting, and this magic happened. There was fibre, raw wool, lots of soap, water, lots of rubbing, and 10 minutes later, with no tools, no needles, no stitching, nothing fancy at all, the fibre just comes together and makes a fabric. And so I was amazed at that. I just was blown away by the sort of simplicity of it, but also that element of magic. And so that was Felt Makers Ireland. And so now actually I became a member, and at the moment I'm in my 3rd year of being the chairperson of Felt Makers Ireland. So I went on to join them and sort of help them out as well. So.
It's an amazing process. I mean, we'll come on to that in a minute, but I feel like most people, when you say felt, think of the coloured squares of felt you can get in like Hickeys or fabric stores, and they don't think about what actually goes into the making and the like when you buy the wool, and it's amazing. And I've seen people make like chunky blankets out of that type of wool now, but it's like really fibrous, and it's such an interesting process.
Yeah, I was actually amazed by how it comes together. When you look at the product in the first place, you never think it's going to end up the way it is. It's really cool.
Sum up.
So one thing we like to do is put people under pressure and get you to try and sum up what you do in 5 words.
Okay. What I do, well, I'm creative. I hope that my brand is quite happy or fun. Mm-hmm. It's all about felt and wool. Is that 5 already? Yeah, I think it's just, fun, creative, playful. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely
I
is
like that. Yeah.
And that's definitely exactly what you get.
Yeah. So were you always creative, or and what's your earliest memory of creating something? Obviously wasn't felt because you said you came to that in adulthood, but what kind of got that spark going?
Yeah. Yes, I've definitely always been creative. Everything from painting and drawing on blackboards to spending all of my teenage years painting, being in my room, decorating every wall, every space had quotes written on it or painted on it. I was given quite a lot of freedom in that way. My earliest memory, well, probably those sort of school projects like making Easter bonnets and decorating eggs or tins of beans and things that you do in primary school. Those are my earliest creative memories. But nothing special.
Was there a particular person or anything that inspired you growing up?
I don't. My family doesn't have a history. I don't have a lovely story about a grandmother who knitted all the time, or my mother who made patchwork blankets. I don't have any of those. My dad is a mathematician, works in a university, and my mum was very much a geographer and a town planner. So I think I was a bit of an oddball. In fact, I think maybe it's rebellion. It's sort of teenage rebellion, and I need to find something that's my own. So I'll stick with this. That's where I really do think it was when the teachers said, "No, you'll never make a living doing that." I thought, yes, I will.
Oh, that's really interesting though, because I feel like most creative people we talk to are like, oh yeah, I have a aunt or someone that's an artist, or a sewer or whatever it is, and they helped and encouraged me to. So it's really lovely to hear as well that you've kind of gone out on your own. And
it's interesting as well, you were saying about the kind of the rebellious side, because I remember as well so many people at school being told, no, there's no point doing this because it's never going to work, you're not going to make enough money, all that stuff. But so many of those people have stuck to what they wanted to do and are doing absolutely fine. I think it almost spurs people on to just go for what they want to do.
Absolutely. If you're good at what you're doing, if you love what you're doing, if you love what you're doing, you're going to be very committed to it. You're going to stick with it, and it's not always going to work out first time. I look back. I'm in my mid-40s now, and I look back over decades, and it's not all the same stuff. Some of it's knitwear design, some of it's garden design. Now it's felting, but it all involves color and texture, and I've managed to make a living doing it. So, I think that says something. I would always encourage people to go with what they really want to do.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. So we touched on the felting process before, so obviously it's a bit more complex, but could you explain it, briefly to us?
Yeah. So I mostly use merino wool fibre, but you can use all sorts of different Irish breed fibres and British breeds. So, for example, Shetland wool, Corriedale, blue-faced Leicester, things like this. And it's not just quite the wool straight off the sheep's back. It has been cleaned and fluffed up a bit. That's how I get my wool. It's nicely clean and fluffy. But it really is a process of laying fibres in 2 directions, so horizontally and then vertically, so that the fibres are able to come together and lock together by using soap and water and friction. So rolling and rubbing. It's very slow. It's something that it's labor intensive. It's very, it's hours of rolling and hours of rubbing to make a piece of fabric. There's nothing really that can speed it up. You're trying to achieve what we've all done, which is put a woolen jumper in the washing machine and it shrinks down to that dense fabric that holds together. That's what you're trying to achieve. But I can't just put my piece of merino in the washing machine because I'd have no control over the way the fibers would shrink together. I have to roll them in certain directions to get them to shrink to the size that I want them to be. So I can't speed it up. That's my one regret. But it is magic the way that it comes together, from what appears to be fluffy cotton wool to lovely, solid, long-lasting, fully biodegradable wool fabric. And you can make 2D and 3D products from it. So you can sculpt with it.
Yeah, that's what I found really interesting about your pieces, because I'd only ever made 2D. So like table runners, kind of like dense wraps or scarves, and Christmas ornaments and things like that, but always 2D. And then when I discovered your things, I was like, wow, that's kind of taken it to a whole nother dimension.
And you have a very distinctive and unique style. Is that something that you've developed over the years, or?
You see, I love hearing that, because the inner critic in me is very strong. So I'm constantly looking and thinking, do I have any style at all? This year I am focused. So 2021, I'm focused on rainbow, Tamzen, just make happy rainbows. So my colors are quite strong and highly contrasting and, happy. But style wise, I worry, because I see other felt makers that, I look at their Instagram pages and I love it. I really love it. And I just don't think I'm sophisticated enough. I can't edit myself. It's everything that I do. The next thing is different. So,
but I think that's
I don't see that as a problem, because I'm an artist as well, and I totally can't edit myself either. But I think, why should we edit ourselves? And also, I was talking to another artist recently, and she was saying that she'd read something about, like, if your followers seen a picture, would they know that that was you? Would they know that that was your work? And I think for your work, like your pieces, 100%, as soon as I see it on Instagram, I'm like, yeah, that's Tamzen.
Yeah. Okay. See, I can't get there yet. I can't see that yet. And so I'm struggling with it, but I just, whatever comes out, whatever I happen to be making, I'm putting out there. And so there must be some part of me that is in there as a style, but am I trying to make a style? Not really.
No, I think that's the problem. I think people try too hard to make themselves in a certain way, try and make a style, try and like have something that makes them stand out as being, this is my piece. But because you have free reign and you kind of just, whatever comes to mind, you go ahead, you make it and whatnot, that's become your style.
It sort of naturally comes together. And it's like the Christmas bits and pieces. Like I know the mushrooms aren't just for Christmas, but like the mushrooms are very colourful, and then the lucky gnomes or the lucky elves, they were more traditional, but together they sort of made you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I knew that if I'd seen them both separately, I would still know they were both you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You definitely have a specific style.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
What would you do?
If you weren't doing what you do now, so felting, what would you be doing instead?
Okay, I have no idea what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this, because I just can't imagine not doing this, or if I can't imagine not being creative and not making something the whole time. I mean, people sort of say, okay, well, I would win the lottery and I would go on holiday and buy a nice house and never work again. And yes, I would go on holiday if we were ever allowed to go, and I would buy a really nice house, but I would always be doing this. I couldn't not work. I mean, this is therapy for me. This just has to come out. This is not something. In fact, I think I don't think I would be very well if I wasn't able to do this. That's the one worry I would have if I was ever locked up in prison, or, you know,
Don't commit a crime.
Yeah, you know, would they let you have some fiber, you know, to make felt? I don't know. I hope so. Yeah. So that didn't answer the question. That didn't answer the question at all. What would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? Something else creative. Probably drawing on the inside of prison walls.
It's so funny because someone else also went, I'd probably be in prison.
Prison seems to be a go-to for people if they weren't doing what they're doing now.
Maybe it's because if you couldn't do what you were doing now, you just go so mad that you'd do some sort of terrible criminal act, and that would put you in prison, where you could continue what you were doing when they gave you art supplies.
Yeah, as long as they were allowed to give you the art supplies. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on.
Well, today I made mice. Today I made 11 mice, just because I thought, you know what, I need mice in my life, and I made one in every colour of the rainbow. But what am I currently working on? I'm quite disciplined, so felt takes a lot. The process of felting takes quite a long time. So for Christmas, I know I need to have Christmas trees ready and some gnomes. So so I've got 50 gnome bodies made already, and it's April, and I have 70 trees made, and it's April.
We're totally getting Christmas trees this year.
Yeah.
I know I need them, but I don't want the stress of having to make them in October. So, but that makes me sound really boring. Like, what am I working on? Christmas? No, that's not what I'm.
But that's usually, because I come from a fashion background as well, and usually you're working a season ahead or a couple of seasons ahead, so it's just naturally built into you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what's the next event? But no, so I plan and I do a little bit of the things that I have to have in stock in order to relieve the pressure, so that when I feel like, do you know what, today I'm just going to make mice, I'm able to make mice. Or, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's it's a whole mix of things that I'm working on. I'm also running for Felt Makers Ireland. I'm running an online exhibition, which is due to be posted in August. So we've just launched that, and I'm asking all the members to submit a piece 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters under the theme "Color Our World." So cool. I have to make my own art piece to submit.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Can't wait to see them.
That would be really cool.
Yeah. I also love the mice. I seen them today and I was like,
oh. Hannah will be on.
It's like, there's a pink mouse. What could I use a pink mouse for? What occasion's coming up? Halloween? Would it fit into Halloween?
An Easter mouse.
The things you didn't know you needed. Shopping fluorescent pink time.
I know, especially now we have Donica. I try and decorate for every kind of occasion that I can, because he loves all the little colourful bits and pieces. And I was thinking, what can I use a mouse for?
I never thought that I would be as obsessed as I was with the
he
gnomes
was
at Christmas.
Out of control at Christmas. I mean, even you ordered 2 elves, 1 gnome.
Yeah. All
the mushrooms.
I nearly ordered more, but
I had to stop him because I was actually we have so many Christmas decorations. We have to limit ourselves to the amount of Christmas decorations we buy every year. And Shane was like, but what about the trees? I was like, why don't we just hold off on the trees till now? I mean, I love the trees too, but otherwise we'll have nothing to buy next year, Shane.
Then I just didn't tell her and I just bought more.
Yeah. He's like, by the way, magic and
Sparkles.
Magic and sparkles are coming soon. I was like, stop buying.
Yeah, that was very funny at Christmas because I had named a lot of them. You know, I left some for people to name themselves, and then I named some of them. And I had Magic and Sparkles and Chips and Dip and a few others, Sleepy. But my better half came home. They were all lined up on the mantelpiece and everywhere, you know, and then they suddenly would just leave the house until we were down to our last two. And he was convinced that these were the ones that were staying. I sold one of them. So he came in and it's like, what? Sleepy's gone? Sleepy the gnome's gone? So he went out into the hall and Etsy bought the last one so that it wouldn't, so that I wouldn't sell it.
They can't be on their own as well. No. You got really funny about that as well because we got Neville first. Shane named a gnome Neville. And then you were like really obsessed about the fact that Neville was on his own, and I think that was your excuse to buy Magic and Sparkles.
Well, then I couldn't separate them because they came together. It's like, I have to get both of them.
Yeah.
I sound a little bit obsessed and weird now.
Yeah. Even when we were decorating, you were like, but those two have to be together. And I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit weird now.
I lost my mind, I think, at Christmas. Yeah. See, I love that time of year, and they just, I don't know, they were just really happy and really kind of cool looking. And
and Donica loved
them. Yeah,
the bells and things, didn't he?
So it was perfect. Do you always have an idea for what you're going to be working on next, or does it just come naturally?
It comes last thing at night when I'm just about, when you should be just about to go to sleep, and then it comes. And do I always have an idea? Do I have an idea of what I'm going to be doing in 3 months' time? No, but am I convinced that there will be a new thing, a new idea? Yes, there will be. I'm not going to be running out of ideas. But do I know what they are yet? No, not really. Yeah.
Are you one of these people that keeps a notebook by your bed?
I was literally just about to say that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I keep a notebook, and I mean, it can have everything in it. It can have, the Tesco shopping list in, but it can also have some gems of ideas. Yeah.
Because I find as well that my mind, as soon as I try to go to sleep, I'm like, oh, lilac and blue and bees and flowers and sheep in a field, like all this stuff, and I have to just like quickly draw something or jot it down or like quickly type on my phone or something. But I prefer the notebook because the phone is like makes me just think of more things. I feel that's a creative thing as well.
Yeah, for me it's always like characters or plot points. I as well have notebooks. I must have 3 or 4 different notebooks for different ideas, for stories, or for things I want to do going down. Like I have some things planned out for years.
Yeah.
Like the big picture. But yeah, I'd be lost without a notebook.
I actually bought Shane these cool notebooks from a small business last Christmas, and you can color code them, and they put the numbers on the spine. So like when he's done with one notebook, you can put it on the shelf and that's number 1, and it has like your name on it, and like you can put a quote on it, or you can put like what you're doing in that one, so sketches, and then the next one might be writing, and then number 2 can go on the shelf. And like I thought that was a really good idea, especially
and then
for you,
I'm obsessed with like Stephen King and like Terry Pratchett books and stuff like that, so there's a quote from each of them on the front of them and stuff like that. So they're really cool, really nice idea.
Highs and lows.
What would you say have been your highs so far of your business and a learning curve?
Okay, so I sort of feel like I've been in business for a very long time, because I mean, really, I've been a freelance designer for 15 years through all of my children, and successful enough freelance designer in that I was working with manufacturers and was able to get a mortgage for a house together with my partner. But, you know, they looked at what I was earning. And then COVID came and retail closed, and it just overnight disappeared in March last year. So in terms of learning curve, it was massive. It was really a realization that, okay, you thought you were a freelance designer, and you were, but you had no autonomy. You had no control over it. It wasn't yours. I was working for other people, and they had control. So I had a sort of a conversation with the people I was working with. You know, would there be some work? Yes, there might be some work. Would it be reliable? No, it probably wouldn't be reliable. Would it be steady? No, but they could give me 1 or 2 projects. And I just thought, I can do other things. I think I need to go back to basics and dig deep inside and be creative at just who I am. So and try to have a bit more autonomous creativity. So it was a huge learning curve, and I think out of it, it's only the tiny little sprout of a business, but the felt making is all mine. So I feel I have more control now.
And now that you've experienced this, and obviously you've set up your own business this year or last year, would you ever see yourself going back to the freelance work, or do you think this is you going forward?
Yeah, this is me going for it. Will I collaborate with other people? Absolutely. Collaborations, possibly selling into shops or working with other local designers, you know, that's a lovely thing to do. But freelance to the extent where you are literally reliant on that other company, you're an employee essentially, you know, without the security. Fortunately, I do have support. I'm not making a living at this yet, but I am balancing the books, so that's a start.
Very good.
Could I work for somebody else? I would be a bit of a I'd be hard to work with.
You should be going to prison.
Well, that's good news for you, Shane. A steady supply of Christmas gnomes.
I'm sorted now for years to come.
So what advice would you give to someone else that's wanting to start a creative business?
Okay, well, I mean, I did do lots of courses. I did, you know, the Start Your Own Business course and the Get Your Paperwork Sorted and Make Sure Your Tax Returns Are In Sorted course. And I think these days you'd be very wise to take on some marketing advice, some social media advice. What advice would I give someone? I would say I would make sure that they know that it's extremely hard, and it's not all glamorous. I think maybe 50% of the time I'm doing the felting and the lovely stuff that I really, really love. But then there's all the extraneous stuff, the paperwork, the bookkeeping, the social media, the photography, the run into the post office, the engaging with customers. So you have to be able to be disciplined and plan your time. You have to really, really want it. It's not easy.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said similar things, like, you know, we all have this lovely idea in our head that if you work for yourself, you're gonna, you know, jump out of bed at 10 a.m. and have a coffee for a few hours and, like, roam about the house for a while, and then do a bit of art, and then have a nice lunch. And that's just not the case. You're up early, you're talking to people, then you're doing your paperwork, your finances. You might get to do a little bit of art, then you're back to the paperwork, and it's a really hard, long slog.
Yeah, I think people have made it very clear that it's great having an idea, but actually putting it into practice can be really difficult, and it's a lot of work for one person. And a lot of other people we've spoken to, they've gotten to points where they're not able to do all of it on their own. They've had to get external help, and if that's paying for someone to do their books or whatever it might be, not to be afraid to get help. But it's so much work, and as you say at the beginning, you're not getting a huge return, but obviously it's something that you really enjoy doing. So I think that's where people who aren't as passionate about it, they give up because they're not making the big money they thought they were gonna. But if you persist and you really are passionate, then it will come good in the end.
Yeah, I hope so.
No, you'll be fine. I'll buy all of your stuff, don't worry. I'll keep you in business.
How have you found getting yourself out there?
Ooh, okay. So I am definitely an introvert. I love social media because I thought you sat behind your computer screen and were able to voyeuristically sort of, peep into other people's lives and possibly put the odd like and comment. But having to put myself out there as the face of my business has been pretty daunting. It's not something I'm entirely comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I sort of put on a bit of a mask and pretend that, I'm happy Tamzen, and that's the face of my business. But I'm not entirely comfortable with it. That actually, if I could have one wish and one help, one sort of, if someone could come and help me, it would be a little bit of career guidance as to how to approach small businesses, to walk in there and sell your stuff confidently and have that sort of confidence to say, I'd like to give you 20 of these to put in your shop window. Would you like them? I just can't do that yet. So no, I don't like it.
It's definitely something that takes a lot of practice if you're not used to. Mm-hmm. I'm terrible as well. I think we've spoken kind of on another episode of the podcast about the negative, people, a lot of times I think people have a negative kind of thought of social media because of what's portrayed in the press most of the time, whereas it can have a huge positive effect too. But I've always used it, as you said, as a way to kind of show what you're doing, or try and promote something you're doing without having to be the face of it, kind of behind a wall. And only recently I've tried, obviously for this as other things, but to try and put myself out there a bit more, and I find it very difficult. Going on to say Instagram stories and trying to film myself talking, I come across really boring because I'm just not quite confident enough to. And I wouldn't say I'm not a confident person, but it's having I think being from a technology background, knowing that this is always going to be out there, knowing that if I make a balls up of it, that it's always going to be there. I think that's what scares me most. But I just have to keep practicing. I just have to keep trying. And
all of us were born before.
Yeah.
The internet was really a thing. And definitely social media. So I think we're doing well.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes more naturally to the younger kids.
Yeah, definitely.
Although I would say that I sort of try to push myself a little bit beyond my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. By doing things like this podcast. It's it's not something I really want to do, or I'm not an actress or somebody who wants to chat, but you sort of feel no, I should try that, I should do it because it's good for my business, it's probably good for me, and what's the worst that can happen? Okay, someone will laugh at me. Well, I that's been there. That's okay.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think so.
And yeah, like I kind of feel the same about social media. Like I find it a bit easier to put myself out there more than you, and I think it's because I don't care. I think it's because I'm at the age now where I don't really care if someone thinks I look like SHIT or if I'm not cool or whatever it is that they're thinking. I don't care, and I'm using it to talk to people and chat and ramble and meet new people and get my work out there and whatever it is, talk creative or talk about paint or whatever, and don't really mind about what people think of me. I mean, I care more about what they think of my work.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've just recently started doing stories and stuff, and
and that's like one of the scary things for me, like writing. Obviously I have all of these characters and stories going around my head constantly, and I think I can kind of relate to the creative side of people like yourself that have ideas for making things. For me, I can't necessarily make them out of something, but I can put them down on paper. And the first story I wrote, I was terrified to put it out because I just thought people are gonna hate it, and I didn't really get huge feedback from people. A few people, our friends and family, kind of read it, and it's on my website for free to download and stuff like that. And then I released another piece in Halloween last year, and again I was nervous, but I was less nervous than I was the first time because I kind of thought to myself, like, I want people obviously to read it, but if they can give me criticism, then I have something to work on, rather than just thinking it's all negative. I turn it into a kind of positive. But now this year is a bit scarier because I'm hoping to release my first novel this year, rather than like short stories, and that's much more terrifying because obviously I'm looking to have that really be pushed out there. I want that to be available to buy it anywhere, and that's scary. And I am scared. But look, if you don't do it, like, there's no point. For years I put off writing. I wanted to write for a long time, and I never did it because I thought, no one's going to want to read it, or no one's going to, they're only going to think it's rubbish. And then I just started writing on the train on my way into work. And that's where it all kind of started. But yeah.
The regret of not doing it would be worse, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So it is scary to put yourself out there, but almost it's a risk worth taking. So.
Yeah. And how have you found the small business community then?
Actually, very supportive. Small business community and Instagram and creatives support creatives. I think there's some sort of connection there. There's some sort of understanding of how the pieces of work might represent that person, or they've put their heart and soul into it. So I know myself at Christmas time, I bought everything from people within Ireland, shop local campaigns, and the same happened to me. I've met people who, the first thing they did, like you guys, was buy a gnome, and then that sort of support has been massive, actually, and that's all from small, creative, independent businesses. It's a really nice community.
Yeah, I think like most of us small business people, like we don't have huge amounts of disposable income, but what we do have, we kind of support each other with, and we appreciate how much time and effort has gone into what you make. And like you said, we know that like that is you, like that piece represents you. Do you know, like when I paint, like that's a bit of me going out into the world, and I think we all get that.
Yeah, and I think this kind of leads on to something I was going to ask you next. Like, this year is kind of, or a year and a half now at this point, has really made people think differently about how they're shopping, and not even just how they're shopping, but how things are being made. So like, if you think back to say 2 years ago, you may have had, like, I don't know, a retailer may have had their own version of, say, the felt gnome, and you would have been like, okay, yeah, that's cool, I'll buy one of these. And now, having seen, as Hannah said, like seeing all of the work and the kind of personality that you put into them, I was way happier to spend money on something that you had produced rather than a big company, because it had a story behind it. And it meant more to buy that.
And buying something at a slightly higher price from a small business, because you know that they don't have the
costing,
the bulk. They don't bulk buy, everything's handmade, they're not mass producing. And I feel like as a small business owner myself, you appreciate that, like, it is going to be a slightly higher price because that person's expertise and love and attention has gone into it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that people have realised that. And I mean, with the way that the kind of shop local thing has been a real focus, have you found that's had a real positive outcome for you compared to, say, well, I suppose you hadn't really started business before, but if you know what I mean, like, have you seen more people have definitely come towards you in the last few months even compared to before?
Definitely. And I mean, my main market is Ireland, and Ireland is big enough for me, just because of the rate that felt is produced, or I produce felt. It's slow, and Ireland is a good enough market for me, and I'm really, really happy that I started just before Christmas, because the boost to your motivation and morale is massive. And hopefully that will sustain me through quieter months, But I think that's really important that we're shopping local, and yes, we might be paying a slightly higher price for handmade, but it's quality and we know where it's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. And as well, like, we love to support our own, do you know what I mean? As in, like, if I'm a Kerry artist but I'm now living in Wicklow, and both Kerry and Wicklow have really welcomed me and supported me, and it's kind of the same with the UK as well. We're close neighbours and love to support small businesses there as well. But there's such a camaraderie.
Yeah.
And do you think that the kind of shop Irish or shop local movement will continue going forward, and that people's habits now have changed going forward?
I hope it continues, but I hope it continues to the extent it's not that everything has to be made in Ireland. I'm from Belfast myself, so I have the whole north-south thing, and I'm a big European person, so I lived in Belgium, so this is all local. But I do hope that the movement continues, that we know where our product is coming from and that it's fair. So even if it's coming from the Far East or from Japan or from Bangladesh or whatever, that it's fair, that there's a transparency there, that it's not disposable, that it's sustainable, but that that it's not just pure greenwashing marketing speak, that that it really, those people are being paid a proper amount, that the environment is not being punished. I hope that the movement continues to the extent that we all appreciate what we're buying and place real value on it, and buy less, actually.
That's a really good point, actually.
Buy less.
It's a really good point, though, that it doesn't necessarily have to just be within the country, as long as there is that transparency that we know that the origins of what you're buying. And it is kind of, it's going into other areas of the retail market as well. It's not just necessarily crafts or anything like that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of focus now on the origins of where things are coming from, which is great. Really good.
Yeah, I feel like Europe's really good for that transparency as well. Because even with Brexit, I've been looking elsewhere for things. I'm sorry, UK people, but Brexit customs is so much. Sort that out and I'll shop with you again. But, I'm looking elsewhere in Europe for bits and pieces that I might have before gone to a larger company in the UK. And I feel like Europe's really, really clear, on their websites and stuff. It's produced here and it's made there, or we source it from here. It's definitely something that we could all improve on here. Because before it was all a bit, not cloak and dagger, but no one really knew where things came from.
No.
And it's only in the last sort of year that we're all thinking about it a bit more.
There's been a whole global shift, I think, though, on everything. Like, even having to work remotely for the last, say, year and a half for a lot of people has completely changed the way the business is working now, because they know that they now don't rely on people having to be in a physical location. And obviously, like, commuting then has changed, which has had, I'm sure it's had a huge environmental effect. It's probably saved a lot of pollution. I remember seeing, as we've said in a previous podcast, there was pictures and images from all over
Venice
the world.
Venice was impressive, considering how much trouble they've had the last few years.
And it's just cleared up because people weren't able to drive. People weren't able to go on trains, fly. So, yeah, there's been huge impacts, a positive impact to try and counteract the negative. But
Share the spotlight.
If there's any kind of small businesses or creatives or anyone in your field that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Well, there's lots and lots of small businesses that I would like to shout out to, but there are one or two that I could mention. There's Imprint Illustration, and that's run by Catherine. We used to work together, and she does lovely sort of bespoke prints, welly boot family drawings and winter hat drawings. So she's Imprint Illustration. And there's Sock Co-op, which is run by Anna. So she does lovely socks, sort of based on places in Ireland, Dublin socks, Galway socks, things like that. Very nice gifts. And all three of us used to work in a small fast fashion retail house. So it's funny how people turn their backs on fast fashion and then set up their own small business. And then I have to give a shout out to my cousin, who is My Pet Lamb Official, and she does Donegal hand knits after studying a degree in sustainable fashion. So yeah, she's really invested, but they're lovely children's wear, and it's merino wool as well, which I obviously love.
Yeah.
That sounds cool, actually.
Yeah. Better check that one out.
Yeah, nice bit of knit. I like knitwear too.
Stop shopping.
Yeah, I can't help it. So why don't you tell us then where people can find your products and you and kind of check you out a bit more?
Okay, well, you can find me under the handle on Instagram at Tamzen Lundy Designs, and I'm also on Facebook. That's where you can find me. I sell through Etsy and through Shop in Ireland. And I take commissions as well. So if there's I think people are sometimes afraid to approach a crafter or an artist. But if it's possible, if it's feasible, if the costs are right, if I can get the materials, and if you're prepared to wait, because sometimes I'm working on something else, then I'm always open to collaborate with people. So yeah.
I got 2 amazing commissions off you a few months ago that I talked about on my Instagram stories. So if anyone wants to go check them out.
Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant. So thank you very much for coming on and telling us all a bit more about you and what it is that you do, and obviously we want people to go and to check you out and buy some more of your things, because they really are nice and unique and just great little things to have around.
Look out for mice.
Look out for mice and the gnomes, obviously. The gnomes.
Alright, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks guys, thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the I-Endeavour podcast.
Join us next week for another episode. You can find us on YouTube or your favourite podcasting app, or on Instagram.
And if you're a creator or a small business that would like to take part in Series 2, email podcast@idyllicendeavour.com.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to make sure you see all future episodes.